You wake up one morning, your house is still there, your car is still there, your neighbor is still standing across the street. But where your street ends, there's no city anymore. There's a forest, and somewhere inside that forest, something much bigger than you is breathing. For years now, we've all been saying the same thing. Some version of, I just want a proper dinosaur movie that isn't Jurassic. Not a spin-off, not a legacy sequel. Something original with real teeth. Well, that movie exists now. The End of Oak Street is in theaters. It has better reviews than any Jurassic sequel, and it was made for a fraction of what those films cost. Which sounds like a happy ending. It isn't, quite. Because the more I dug into how this movie was received, the more I found a genuinely strange split between the people reviewing it and the people watching it. And that split says something bigger about whether dinosaur movies can actually live outside the Jurassic name. So let's talk about it. Start with the man behind the camera, because he explains a lot about why this film feels the way it does. David Robert Mitchell made It Follows, one of the most original and unsettling horror films of the last decade. Then he made Under the Silver Lake, a far more experimental swing that hit a wall commercially. So this is the first time Mitchell has been handed a studio film at this scale, with an $80 million budget and a cast this size, which is already an interesting bet. You don't usually hand the guy who made a slow, dread-soaked art house horror movie a summer creature feature, producing. You've got J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot. Hold that thought, because it becomes a whole conversation in a minute. And on score, Michael Giacchino. That name matters more than it might sound, because the thing people consistently praise about this movie is its 80s atmosphere. And the music is the spine holding that atmosphere upright. Small piece of trivia. The film was originally titled Flowervale Street, and Oscar Isaac was attached to the lead before Ewan McGregor stepped in. The cast is Anne Hathaway, Ewan McGregor, Maisie Stella, and Christian Convery, a single family, the Platts, carrying the whole film. And the whole thing runs 99 minutes. That runtime comes back later, and not in a good way. Here's the premise, spoiler-free. A mysterious cosmic event rips Oak Street out of suburbia and drops the entire neighborhood somewhere unknown. The Platts discover that surviving this unrecognizable place depends on staying together. Standard creature feature setup. But here's where I think the movie gets interesting. Greg, the father, wants to go back. Back to before the marriage soured. Back to when he had a full-time job. Back to when his family looked like a postcard of 80s suburban America. Denise, the mother, wants him to stop pretending and admit the thing is broken. So the film takes a man who desperately wants to return to the past and sends him to the past, literally. That's not a coincidence. That's the whole engine of the movie. And for a film with dinosaurs in it, that's an unusually smart thematic foundation to build on. Now, about that Abrams thing. From the moment the first trailer dropped, the internet split down the middle over one question. Is this secretly a Cloverfield movie? You can see the logic. Abrams producing. An unexplained cosmic event at the center. That classic mystery box structure where the film withholds more than it explains. And the original title, Flowervale, which even sounds like Cloverfield if you say it fast enough. Critics noticed it too. The film pulls openly from Spielberg and from Abrams, who essentially came up in that shadow. A lot of writers have described it as sitting at the intersection of Jurassic Park, E.T., Super 8, and Cloverfield. Critic Matt Lynch put it about as bluntly as you can on Letterboxd. He says there's no way this film didn't spend some time in development as a Cloverfield installment. He also says it nails a 1986-era Amblin feel, and that it carries genuine poltergeist energy. But I want to be clear, because I've seen people going in expecting a puzzle piece. It is not officially part of the Cloverfield universe. It's standalone. The theory is fun, the DNA is real, but don't hang your expectations on a connection that isn't there. So how did it actually land? On the critical side, extremely well. 85% of 220 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes are positive, with an average score of 7.1 out of 10. For a dinosaur movie, that's a serious number, and it's above every single Jurassic sequel. The site's consensus calls it pulpy fun that taps into the primal pleasures of the classic creature feature, handled with a light touch and a sharp bite. And when you actually read through the positive reviews, they cluster around two ideas. The first group is basically praising it for knowing exactly what it is. Kyle Smith at the Wall Street Journal writes that Mitchell sets plausibility aside and aims straight at entertainment. That once the film gets going, it keeps the audience squirming and screaming for nearly an hour. David Rooney at The Hollywood Reporter lands in the same place, describing it as big, mindless fun in the best possible sense. Pete Hammond at Deadline calls the relentless pacing jaw-dropping, and adds that you need to see this one in a packed theater because the audience reaction is as entertaining as what's on screen. The second group is more interesting to me because it's about craft. Owen Gleiberman at Variety points out that most of the film is run, shoot, and hide, but that Mitchell stages the creature attacks with witty timing and real skill. David Ehrlich at IndieWire says the action doesn't quite reach the heart-stopping ingenuity of the Jurassic Park kitchen scene, but gets closer than most films manage. And then there's the line that I think sums up the entire movie. From Adam Graham at the Detroit News, he says the film understands that the dinosaurs aren't what matter. What matters is the people running from them. There's one more thread running through the positive reviews that I didn't expect. Several critics single out the fact that the film has a mean streak, that it uses violence to shock rather than to numb. This is not a movie where the creatures are decorative. It pushes its PG-13 rating about as hard as it can, but not everyone came out of it happy. And the complaints are remarkably consistent. Katie Smith-Wong at FlickFeast argues that, despite the dinosaurs and the star power, the film is better suited to viewers who won't be bothered by plot holes and a weak script. Christian M. Lin at Fort Worth Weekly is harsher. He says he can't overlook how consistently the story cuts corners the moment it has to deal with the family. Others felt the set pieces never quite became urgent. Notice what those criticisms have in common. Nobody's complaining about the dinosaurs. They're complaining about the people in between the dinosaurs, which brings us to the part of this story I find genuinely fascinating. Because critics gave this thing 85%. Audiences did not. The Rotten Tomatoes audience score sits around 74. Metacritic users are at 71. IMDb is at 6.6. Letterboxd is at 3.2. Average it across platforms, and you land around 71 out of 100. That's not a disaster. But it's a visible gap, and gaps like that usually mean something. So what's causing it? The audience complaints point in a very specific direction. Two things come up over and over. The ending feels abrupt and convenient. And the marriage subplot. The thing I just told you was the smartest idea in the movie never gets developed. Enough to pay off, and now that 99-minute runtime starts to look less like discipline and more like a compromise. Here's my read. Critics are grading this as a creature feature that over-delivers. Audiences are grading it as a drama that under-delivers. Both are looking at the same movie and weighing the same flaw differently. And if you go in expecting the emotional story the premise promises, you're more likely to walk out slightly shortchanged. The Letterboxd reviews capture that split perfectly. And honestly, they're funnier than anything I could write. One user said that after watching this, the Jurassic franchise should be embarrassed. Another summed the whole film up as Stranger Park Jurassic things. Someone else said, Abrams carries his Spielberg fandom so well that this feels more Spielberg than Spielberg's own latest. Then, on the other side, one of the most liked reviews on the site takes aim at the film's horror logic by simply retitling it, Look Behind You, Dumbass. The movie. Classic creature feature complaint, and not an unfair one. My personal favorite, though, is the user who just asks why on earth the dog couldn't sleep inside the house. Watch it and you'll know exactly what they mean. The Rotten Tomatoes audience reviews add one more recurring note. The story meanders a bit in the middle, and the dinosaur designs are a messy mix of outdated and modern ideas. But the performances and the sheer sustained tension more than make up for it. One viewer called it a must-see and said it reminded them most of Super 8. Another said they've seen this. Neighborhood cut off from the world. Premise plenty of times before, and expected more with Abrams involved. But that design comment deserves its own conversation, because it's the thing dinosaur fans are going to argue about all week. The lineup leans heavily on Allosaurus, and the feathers versus scales debate is already in full swing online. Some of the designs are more scientifically accurate, but cinematically divisive. And the general consensus that's emerged is one I completely agree with. The dinosaurs in this film are used better than they're designed. That distinctly